Before watching the video, do you know what MOA means? What's going on, everyone? Here's a box. This box has a lot of parts in it, and I'm very excited about these parts. Inside of this box is a Dlux Fab 2.2 Pro kit. Now that may not seem all that descript to you, but what 2.2 Pro refers to is a specific competition class in RC rock crawling. This doesn't have the scale focused rule set. It is all about performance. Today I'm going to show you what comes in this kit, and I'm going to start assembling it. The highlight of this kit is these. These are the super lights, the axles for this truck. The name is super light. It's descriptive and catchy, but these here are MOA axles. MOA stands for motor on axle. This is a transmission mounted right to the axle, and your motor mounts to it. You have one in the rear, this one, because there's no steering. Then you have one that's for the front. Again, a slightly different shaped transmission here on the rear. The servo mount is built onto it as well. And then you've got these knuckles that are much less scale looking than you may be used to. Again, like the rear, you mount your motor right to it, and there is no drive shaft to go back to the center. There's just motor wires. But another benefit beyond the weight is that you can independently control the front or rear axle. You can put a little bit more speed to the front. You have infinitely adjustable overdrive, basically. You see that commonly in shaft-driven trucks. Now you can do it electronically with the motor on axle. It also allows you to have the dig function where you keep the rear locked and then spin just the front, but you can also do the opposite, spin the rear only and not the front. And currently, for what's available in the 2.2 Pro market, this is one of the preferred axle options. Next in the kit, we've got a bag of shock parts. These shocks are machined like a Traxxas Big Bore, but with some modifications made to them to make them specifically a little bit more tuned into this type of truck. And you'll see that as we get this truck further assembled. But you get your choice of shock body color, all the different anodizing colors you can basically choose. I went for black. How original. But it comes with springs, the shock bodies, shafts, rebuild parts, everything. So that's going to be our full shock set included in there. This bag includes all 4 of the loaded dice wheels that we're going to be using. Now, they're tightly wrapped so you can't really see much. They're just plates of carbon fiber. The tire's actually glued to them just to keep weight even further down. Bead locks just complicate the matters. But there is more to these wheels than just being super light. You're gonna see that these have some really cool and interesting ways that they add weight to the truck as low as possible and keep the rotating mass down. These are the brass knuckle weights and tungsten slugs that go inside of those holes so you can fine tune the weight. Now, I talked a lot about being lightweight, and that's still the goal. You want the truck as light as possible. You only want to add weight as needed and as low as possible. So these, in combination with the super light axles and those wheels that I said we'd talk more about, combined to be a pretty slick solution. Again, you'll see more of that here shortly. And then this bag has a lot going on inside, lots of little parts. These saran wrap parts here are most of the chassis. 4 small pieces of carbon fiber will turn into a chassis that is both the chassis and the body. Everything, the whole style is just gonna be this thing, which will make more sense. We do have some 3D printed trays or cross braces, battery thing. We'll see exactly. Haven't got into that yet. We have a CNC machined skid plate for it. It's very thin, keeps the weight low. It's also got a little bit of deflection on the front. We've got titanium links, 3/16 and 1/8 inch. So very small for upper links to keep weight even further down. Then we have these little machine pieces here that kind of go over the link so that when the rod end goes on, it's got a perfectly smooth transition from that titanium link onto the rod end. So there's no abrupt step. Just helps not get caught up when you're in some very technical terrain. These aluminum cross braces are going to be what helps to construct the rest of the shape of the chassis. And then we've got a couple of bags of rod ends. The larger 4mm ones are going to be for our lowers. The smaller 3mm are going to be for our upper links. In here are some pre-cut body panels. It looks like they're clear Lexan, not going to show up super well on camera, but that's going to be our hood, roof, maybe side panels. And then we've got a bunch of decals. Next, we have some Dlux Fab tires. They made their own tire. It's modeled after the Hot Bodies Rovers, which used to be super popular, but now aren't really made. J Concepts, a 1.9 version that you may be more familiar with, called the Ruptures. Dlux came out with these some years ago, and then they redid them with a better performing compound here not that long ago. These are a 2.2 bead, and I believe the overall height with foam is usually somewhere around 5.5 inches. Next, we've got some Crawler Innovations foams. This comes with the Dlux Fab kit, and this is specifically for the wheels, the loaded dice wheels. They've got a larger inner diameter, and that's going to come into play with those brass knuckle weights that we talked about from before. Now that's all for the Dlux Fab parts that came in that kit that I purchased, but I also got some of my electronics already. This is a Shifts RC GT3 servo. I'm building this truck to take to the WRCCA Nationals that's coming up in October this year. And Shifts is one of the title sponsors. They're co-title sponsoring that event alongside Elite Comps. So since Shifts is one of the title sponsors, I figured that I would also run one of the Shifts servos, hopefully to help support the people that are helping to support that event. I also got my motors here. These are Holmes Hobbies Crawlmaster Magnum Stubbies. These are 13 turn with some custom orange end bells, because why not? One for each axle, so a front and a rear motor. And then since you're running two motors and you want independent control of them, I have two ESCs. How the programming of all this goes into the radio is something that we'll get into likely in a video or two down the road as this thing gets closer to being completed. But that's a look into the parts that are included with this kit. It's been quite some time since I've had a comp truck. I used to compete very regularly. I traveled all over going to these events for years, and I haven't owned one of these trucks since like 2013 or so. So it's been, 9 years or so, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to owning one. And this isn't the only truck that I'm going to go down and compete with, but you'll see more of that as the event gets closer. But now I'm going to cut away, start assembling this truck. You get the benefit of just jumping to the progress. Done. Kind of. It's assembled, most of it, to start at least. Number of changes that I'm going to make for tuning based on the suggestions of people that have been consistently doing this for much longer. I used to do this a lot, but by all means, I have been out of touch with this side of it for a while. So I'm going to lean on the experience of some friends to get me a good starting point. But let's go over quickly how this all assembled. I know you saw some of the raw parts, but let's kind of step through this so I can show you. Now you saw that the axles came pre-assembled. No matter which way you buy this kit, axles are pre-done, just to make sure that everything goes together well, I imagine. So front axle here, they do have these, beefy knuckles, quite a lot of mass to them. You will notice that there's a brass plate on the bottom. There's an aluminum one on top, just for the little bit of weight distribution that would add. The, large mass of the knuckle in the center is just aluminum, so it doesn't add a ton, but it does give it some surface area for a number of other things. Like it does have steering stops molded in, and these massive weight hangers are mounted to the knuckles. You can see behind there that brass color, this half moon shape that you can see easier on the back side of the wheel. That mounts to the knuckle itself, and then the little circles you see are the tungsten slugs that actually they're press fit into that. I used my benchtop vise, lined them up, and then just tightened them in, and it's a literal press fit, so not a quick change type solution. All the parts on here are basically how this truck comes out of the box, with the exception of the motors. I'd have already installed my motors onto here. No pinions yet. I've got those on order, but those will be here shortly. The titanium links were super easy to assemble. There is these little link taper washers to help transition from the link shaft up onto the rod end, and they just float. They don't actually attached, and there's no shoulder that they attach to. So I'm kind of assuming that I'm gonna have to like glue those to the rod end. I don't know for sure, but I'll get into some of those little details as I get closer to wrapping this thing up. The shocks are of their own manufacturing, but they're Traxxas big bore style. It's got the rod end style cap at the bottom, at least how I have them situated here on the front. I've got the spring to the top side on the front shocks, and I've got the spring to the bottom side on the rear shocks. And that was just because there is a video with instructions on how to assemble this. It's a bit dated, but still gets me through the most part. And that's how I set the truck up for, at least to start, and I'll adjust from there. But I got the shocks assembled fairly easily. I have all the tools to assemble those without much stress. I don't have any shock fluid in these yet because I'm going to 25 weight, which was a suggestion given to me. Other than that, it was a pretty straightforward assembly of that shock. I do have the 1/8 inch titanium links on the top, the 3/16 on the bottom, just to shave a little bit more and keep forcing weight as low as possible. I did also install the Shifts RC. This is the GT3 servo, so that's in place also. Of course, not included. These are the Dlux Fab tires. I believe these are called the GOAT tires, and the loaded dice wheels. To get these brass hangers that I have with the tungsten weight, you have to add the loaded dice wheels as an option. But I tried to just go with what would be the best option that was available from them. Everything else is super straightforward. The chassis bolted together without much fuss. It does have an aluminum skid plate at the bottom there, and we will be putting the electronics for this car inside of the chassis on the skid plate. We're going to have 2 BR Mini ESCs, which I believe I showed at the outset. Now, I'll be wiring these up into what is called a smashed setup, which is just with everything just as tight and compact as possible. It's been termed a, smashed ESCs. You can buy them pre-done if you like, if you don't want to get into all the soldering of that. I'm going to do it myself, but you can buy this whole truck completely done with electronics also if you like. It just depends on if you want the experience of building it yourself or if you just want to click buy done. Obviously, I don't have the body panels on here or anything like that yet, so there's no outward style. Granted, these are a pretty minimal vehicle, so there's not as much room for style as you may be used to, depending on what area of the hobby you're coming from. But in the end, if you appreciate these things for what they are, I think you'll find that these are also pretty cool. My plan for the next video is to have this truck fully RTR, have all the electronics in there, everything 100% ready to go, and then show you a little bit about the capabilities of an MOA with the ability to mix the throttle between the two and what that allows you to do with locking one axle or the other, or varying the speed between one versus the other, and how you can do that with radios like the Futaba 7PX or 10PX, 4PX. A lot of them have that capability. So that is what you're going to see on this one next. Looking forward to getting this thing out on the rocks though before too long, because it's been a long time since I've driven a 2.2 class crawler like this. So if you have any questions about these, whatever it may be, silly, basic, more advanced, if I don't have the answer, I'll ask somebody who is more qualified and get back to you. But you can check out where I got this vehicle. I'll link to it in the description below, and you're going to see a little bit more of it because comp crawler bug has bitten me slightly again, and I'm having a good time. There's more comp crawlers coming too, not just this one. Thanks as always for watching. Again, if you like these videos, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already. Comment with your questions. Happy to dive into it. Let you know anything that I can tell you. But thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.